last week marked 100 days since the formation of the Government of National Unity. Speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, President Cyril Ramaphosa took the opportunity to sell the GNU to world leaders. There, however, seems to be a rift between the ANC and DA, with the latter's federal leader, Helen Zille, issuing apparent threats to the ANC after the motion of no confidence against Tshwane Mayor Cilliers Brink. I am joined now by SAFTU General Secretary, that's Zwelinzima Vavi, for a reflection of 100 days of the GNU. Mr. Vavi, good to have you on the program this afternoon. Firstly, how do you assess the first 100 days of the GNU, especially from the perspective of the working class? And what key indicators support your position on this?
Well, we warned from the beginning that the coming together of a former liberation movement that was originally social democratic in its posture, if you look at the RDP and the Freedom Charter, which then abandoned those positions to embrace neoliberalism as indicated through its privatization program that started in 1995 and the endorsement of a pro-business, anti-poor neoliberal approach in GIE or through GIE in 1996. That a coming together of that liberal party now and a super conservative, blue-eyed boy arch-employer spokesperson in the form of the Democratic Alliance will spell a doomsday for the working class and the marginalized black majority in South Africa. All signs in the first 100 days of this government indicate that we were right. And we want to make few examples, as you are pointing out, in terms of what we are witnessing in the first 100 days. Yeah. And it's 100 days of enforcing and reinforcing neoliberal approaches, neo-colonial approaches to development that have made South Africa the most unequal society in the world in just 30 years. Made South Africa #1 country when it comes to youth unemployment. Made South Africa the #1 country when it comes to general unemployment in the economy. And I guess if we were to look at the levels of crime, in particular violent crime, I doubt there is any country that tolerates that it witnesses 84 of its citizens perish every day violently in the streets. And this happens only in Gaza, and it's now happening in other parts of the Middle East. We are a country in a deep crisis. Let's just look at the few measures as we pointed out in our statement. We look, for example, at the measure of what you call the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and we look at the aim of ending poverty everywhere in all of its forms. And when you look at that goal in the context of South Africa, you will see that the masses continue to languish in poverty, and that about 30 million South Africans live in poverty, defined as the upper bound poverty line of 992 rands. 8 million of our people are languishing in food poverty, and 20 million people in South Africa are food insecure, and 27% of our children are malnourished. Now, the government of national unity, so-called, has not announced any real anti-poverty strategy. They have not announced a redistribution of wealth from the rich to the poor strategy, and they are continuing with what has dismally failed the majority of the citizens of this country and made a fewer minority super rich in the past 30 years. Let's look at the next next goal of the United Nations, the Sustainable Development Goal #2 on ensuring inclusive, equitable, quality education and to promote a lifelong learning opportunities for all. Let's look at what the government of national unity is doing. It is shamelessly hell-bent on advancing the austerity meaning budget cuts. As a result of those budget cuts, the Department of Education is now telling us that they've been cut at the rate of 118 billion rands in the next 3 years. And that these cruel cuts have now seen the Western Cape government announcing that it is going to have to get rid of 2,400 teachers. In KwaZulu-Natal, which have witnessed a 4 billion cut in its budget, is going to be forced to lay off 11,092 teachers. Gauteng province have to cut and reduce the learner transport and cannot expand its early childhood development in order to balance its book in the context of the budget cuts. In Mpumalanga, budget cuts have resulted in 876 million less money available. In the Northwest, the province have seen a 484 million rands cut in its budget.
Right.
All of that means that the goal of an access to education is moving further and further away from ordinary people. Let's look at the healthcare. In the healthcare across the country, and the NOSA statement reinforced the point that we are making as the Federation SAFTU. Across the country, there is a shortages of healthcare professionals. And because of the budget cuts that the Treasury is embarking upon, which the government of national unity is embracing. Through attrition, the vacant posts are not being filled, leaving 84% of the population that rely on the public hospital and public institutions to be in dire straits when it comes to better services in the public hospitals. Minister Motsoaledi told Parliament only this week that as a result of budget cuts, the Free State alone will face a 22% vacancy rate of doctors, followed by Mpumalanga at 18.5% and Limpopo at 17.6% in terms of the vacancy rates there. It means, therefore, that the whole dream of the much publicized national health insurance is moving further and further away together with the Millennium Goals. Let's look at the most important issue for workers, which is the decent work and economic growth. The latest or the second quarter labor force survey of 2024 showed that unemployment is worsening. Now 12.3 million South Africans are unemployed, or 43% are unemployed. There is a destruction of what we used to call a little bit of more secured permanent jobs in the manufacturing sector, which are being culled at an alarming rate. There is a phenomenal rise of what we call the precarity jobs, which offers no job security, no benefits, no better wages. And the exchanges of the economy moving away from manufacturing jobs into the informal sector jobs means that we are seeing a rise of the phenomenon of what you call a working poor. The people who wake up every day to go to work, but who must borrow money from Peter to pay John to survive every month.
Mr. Vavi, with that, and I must say we do appreciate the context that you provide, probably covering the entire statement on the part of SAFTU. But maybe very quickly, as a response to what you've outlined, especially with unemployment continuing to rise, what specific actions do you believe the GNU should take to really address job creation and ensure decent work for all South Africans?
We have been calling for this economy to be overhauled altogether, and upside down, and to be centered around the need to meet the most basic needs of the population for jobs, for eradication of poverty and inequality, for the redistribution of land, and to ensuring that black people have an access to assets so that they can be players in the economy instead of being operating in the margins of the economy. We have called for the government to nationalize the mineral wealth of this country and to ensure reindustrialization through beneficiation of those minerals here in South Africa, to build secondary industries and in the process to create decent jobs and upskill the workforce so that we can be not sidelined by the fourth industrial revolution. We have called in that context on South Africa to focus on restructuring altogether our education system, which makes South Africans totally not competitive, even against its neighboring countries, Swaziland, Botswana, Zimbabwe included, worst of all, the Western powers in the nation. Nothing has been done to ensure that our kids move away from being in the last when it comes to the ladder in terms of reading with meaning at grade 4 and 5, into ensuring that mathematics and science is prioritized and that our teachers are retrained to ensure that they provide that basic education. We have called for the introduction of the national insurance that will be meaningful. We have called for the programs to empower young people. We have called for the reintroduction of the massive public extended programs to build infrastructure where we live, in particular focusing in the areas that were totally sidelined by the apartheid system in the Bantustans, where infrastructure is almost non-existent. Embracing of a program of that kind and abandoning the current fiscal and monetary policies that help the rich to be even more rich and the poor poorer will help South Africa, so that when we count the next 30 years of democracy, we're not doing that from the point where we are the most unequal and poverty-stricken nation amongst the nations of the world when it comes to disindustrializing countries.
That's SAFTU's General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi.